In the old way of telling stories, one never begins with the crime itself. One begins with the blessing that was ignored. On the morning the drums were brought out for Morenike's birthday, the sky over Okeola was the color of ripe pawpaw, soft orange bleeding into blue, an omen the elders would later argue over. Some said it meant abundance, others said it was a warning disguised as beauty. What no one disagreed on was this: the day had arrived carrying something heavy, though it smiled as it came. Morenike woke before the sun. She sat on the edge of her mat, listening to the compound breathe. Pots clinked faintly as her younger cousins moved about the courtyard. Somewhere a pestle struck a mortar in steady rhythm. Thud, pause, thud, like a heart practicing patience. The smell of wood smoke and ginger tea drifted through the air. Today she was 30. In her people's reckoning, 30 was not merely an age, it was a crossing. A woman who reached it was no longer considered unfinished clay. She was expected to know herself, to have learned when to bend and when to stand firm, to have given something of herself to others, and in return to have been given respect. Morenike smiled faintly as she wrapped her shawl tighter around her shoulders. Respect, she thought. She rose and stepped into the courtyard. The morning greeted her gently. Palm fronds rustled overhead. Chickens scattered at her feet. Her mother's sisters were already there, their voices weaving together like cloth on a loom. Laughter, teasing, the soft authority of women who had survived many seasons. "Birthday woman," one of them called. "Come and sit, let us look at you properly." Morenike obeyed, lowering herself onto a wooden stool. Hands immediately descended upon her, adjusting her headscarf, smoothing her wrapper, inspecting her face with affectionate scrutiny. "You have kept yourself well," her mother's elder sister said. "Marriage has not swallowed you." Morenike laughed politely, though something tightened behind her ribs. Marriage. The word was never neutral. Across the compound, Adekunle's car was already parked, polished until it reflected the morning light like water. He had arrived late the night before, as usual, offering hurried greetings before retreating into silence. Even now, he had not come out to greet anyone. "He will come," her mother said when she noticed Morenike's glance. "Men are slow in the morning." Morenike nodded, though she knew better. Adekunle was never slow when it mattered to him. By mid-morning, the compound had filled. Friends arrived in bright clothes, laughter trailing behind them. Neighbors leaned over. After Adekunle left the compound, silence remained behind like an unwanted guest who refused to stand up and go. It settled into corners, into mouths, into the space between breaths. The drums did not resume. The food, still steaming, lost its appeal. What had been prepared as celebration now sat like evidence of a crime that had not yet been named. Morenike remained standing where she was. Her wrapper felt suddenly heavy against her skin. The beads around her neck pressed like questions she could not yet answer. She stared at the ground, not because she was ashamed, but because the earth felt like the only witness that would not betray her. Around her, people shifted uneasily. Some looked at her with pity, others with discomfort, a few with curiosity sharpened by cruelty. In the telling of stories, humiliation is never carried by one person alone. It spreads, looking for new hosts. Her mother was the first to move. She stepped forward slowly, her back straight, her face set in a way Morenike recognized from childhood. It was the face her mother wore when injustice entered the house uninvited. Without raising her voice, she reached for Morenike's hand and squeezed it firmly, grounding her. The elders followed. Mats were brought out and spread beneath the old Iroko tree at the edge of the compound. One by one, the elders of the family and the community took their seats. Their presence shifted the atmosphere. Where moments ago there had been shock and gossip waiting to bloom, there was now gravity. In their tradition, when elders sat, It meant something had crossed from the private into the communal. What happened here would not disappear easily. Morenike was guided to sit among them, not at the center, but not at the edge either, exactly where she belonged. She lowered herself onto the mat, her movements measured, her head held steady. She refused to bow it in shame. The oldest among them cleared his throat. He did not speak immediately. Instead, he let silence stretch, teaching those present that not every wound should be rushed. When he finally spoke, his voice was calm but weighted with years. He reminded the gathering of the importance of marriage, not as a performance, but as a covenant between families, ancestors, and the unborn. He spoke of birthdays as markers of survival, not vanity. He spoke of words as tools that could either build or destroy. Then he spoke of Adekunle, not with anger, with disappointment. He said that a man who chooses spectacle over dignity has already confessed something about himself. He said that public humiliation was not strength, but fear wearing a loud voice. He said that even when a marriage ends, there are paths that honor everyone involved and paths that poison the ground for generations. As the elder spoke, Morenike listened. She listened as if each word were being placed gently inside her, stored for later. She did not interrupt. She did not explain. She did not defend herself. Her stillness unsettled some, but the elders understood. A woman who has been wounded publicly often chooses silence not because she has nothing to say, but because she is deciding what deserves breath. When the elders finished, they turned to her. They asked if she wished to speak. Morenike lifted her head. Her voice, when it came, was steady. She thanked everyone who had come to celebrate her life. She acknowledged the pain of the moment without dramatizing it. She said that what had been done to her was not small, but she would not allow it to define her. She said she would leave the matter in the hands of time and truth. Time and truth. Those words stirred something uneasy in the air. After the elders arose and dispersed, the crowd slowly thinned. People found reasons to leave. Some embraced Morenike tightly, whispering encouragement. Others avoided her eyes, as if humiliation were contagious. By evening, the compound was quiet again. Morenike sat alone beneath the iroko tree, watching shadows lengthen. Her body was tired, but her mind refused rest. Images replayed themselves without her permission. Adekunle's face, his voice, the way he had not hesitated. It would have been easy to cry. It would have been expected. But something in her resisted the simplicity of tears. Grief came, yes, but it came braided with anger, and beneath both of those was something colder, sharper, and far more patient. That night, she dreamed. In her dream, she stood at the edge of a vast crossroads. Paths stretched in every direction, some wide and inviting, others narrow and overgrown. At the center of the crossroads sat a figure she could not fully see, its form shifting like heat above fire. The figure did not speak, but Morenike understood its message without words. Every path led somewhere. Some led to healing, some to destruction. Some looped back on themselves endlessly. One path, barely visible, led forward through darkness towards something that would require sacrifice. When she woke, her heart was racing. She did not tell anyone about the dream. In the weeks that followed, life attempted to return to normal, but normal had been altered now. Morenike moved differently now. She spoke less. She observed more. People noticed the change, though they could not name it. She began to leave the house early in the mornings, returning late in the evenings. When asked where she went, she smiled and said she was learning. Learning what? No one knew. Some said she was studying trade. Others said she was learning the old stories from a distant relative known for her wisdom. A few whispered that she was consulting forces best left undisturbed. In a town that fed on speculation, truth rarely mattered. What mattered was that Morenike was no longer the woman Adekunle had humiliated. And far away, though he did not know it yet, Adekunle was beginning to discover that shame has a memory. It waits, it grows teeth,
and when it returns, it rarely knocks.
Years do not pass the same way for everyone. For some, time moves like a loyal companion, walking beside them steady and predictable. For others, it becomes a judge, silent but attentive, recording every step, every misstep, every debt left unpaid. For Adekule and Morenike, time chose different roles. For Morenike, the years that followed her humiliation were not wasted in mourning. She treated them as one treats farmland after a fire. She cleared what was burned. She studied the soil. She planted carefully. She left Ileayo not in shame, but in quiet determination. She traveled across towns and cities, working, learning, observing. She apprenticed herself to women who had survived loss and rebuilt power without spectacle. She listened to elders who taught her that revenge shouted was weak, but revenge that arrived disguised as fate was unstoppable. Along her journey, she encountered the old stories not as entertainment but as instruction. Stories of women who were underestimated and men who confused cruelty for authority. Stories of tricksters who did not lie outright but allowed others to lie themselves into traps. Stories of balance where harm demanded correction, not forgiveness forced by fear. In one town, she met an old storyteller known for speaking only in riddles. The woman studied Morenike for a long time before nodding slowly, as if recognizing something familiar. The lesson given was simple. Do not strike when anger is hot. Strike when the other person believes the matter has ended. Morenike carried that lesson with her like a second spine. Over time, she became successful, not loudly, not ostentatiously, but solidly. Her name began to circulate in spaces where respect was currency. She learned how influence moved, how reputations were built and dismantled, how patience outperformed force. She also learned how men like Adekule aged. They grew comfortable. They mistook survival for victory. They rewrote history in their favor and believed the version they told themselves. Adekule prospered for a while. His public image remained intact. People forgot the birthday incident or softened it into gossip without teeth. He married again briefly, divorced again quickly. His charm dulled, his certainty hardened into arrogance. He spoke often of how he had escaped a difficult marriage, framing cruelty as wisdom. Then the season shifted. Business opportunities dried up. Alliances weakened. People stopped returning his calls with the same urgency. Doors still opened, but not as wide. Respect began to feel conditional. That was when Morenike returned. Not to Ileayo at first, but to the same circles Adekule now struggled to remain relevant in. She arrived not as her past, but as someone new, a woman of stature, a woman with connections, a woman whose name carried weight. She did not seek him out. That was important. She allowed others to notice her first, allowed curiosity to build, allowed whispers to form. When Adekule finally encountered her at a gathering years later, recognition struck him like delayed thunder. She was radiant, composed, untouched by bitterness. He stumbled over greetings, over apologies that arrived too late and carried more fear than remorse. He spoke of misunderstandings, of youthful mistakes, of how life had taught him lessons. Morenike listened politely. She offered him nothing. What he did not know was that the network he was desperately trying to impress had already chosen her over him. Contracts he hoped for quietly shifted away. Invitations stopped coming. Stories resurfaced, told calmly, without exaggeration. The birthday, the humiliation, the pattern. No one accused him directly. They did not need to. His reputation began to unravel, not dramatically, but completely, like cloth pulled apart thread by thread. Every attempt he made to reclaim authority only highlighted how little remained. By the time he realized what was happening, it was too late. Morenike had already moved on again, this time into marriage. Her union was quiet, deliberate, built on mutual respect and shared purpose. The man she married did not need to dominate. He did not need an audience. He understood that partnership was not ownership. When news reached Adekule, it landed with finality. He sought Morenike out one last time, not to reclaim her, but to unburden himself of regret. He spoke of love rediscovered too late, of how he now understood the depth of his wrong. Morenike listened. Then she told him the truth without cruelty. Some doors close not to punish, but to protect. Some regrets exist only to remind us that timing is not forgiving. What he had broken publicly could not be repaired privately. She did not raise her voice. She did not mock him. She did not gloat. She simply stood up and left. Adekunle was left behind with understanding but no remedy. He aged quickly after that, not in years but in spirit. His name faded. His influence evaporated. What remained was memory. In Ileayo, the elders still tell this story. They say humiliation is a seed that always grows. They say revenge does not always look like destruction. Sometimes it looks like exclusion. They say a woman who learns patience becomes more dangerous than one who shouts. And they remind listeners of the final lesson. When you are given joy, guard it. When you are given power, use it carefully. And when you are given love, never mistake the moment for permanence. For time is listening.